Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. Here are the headlines we're tracking this hour. The Adani family trims its holding in 4 group companies. US-based GQG Partners, along with a few other funds, pump in more than 15,000 crore rupees to pick up minority stakes in Adani Enterprises, Adani Ports, Adani Transmission and Adani Green. Supreme Court forms a 6-member committee headed by a retired judge to review regulatory mechanism and investor protection framework after the Adani Hindenburg case. Also orders Sebi to probe the allegations made by Hindenburg and submit a report within 2 months. The Supreme Court stops the government from unilaterally appointing election commissioners, rules that appointments should be done on the advice of a panel with the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition in the Lok Sabha and the Chief Justice of India. The process will remain till the government frames a specific law. In a first-of-its-kind order, Sebi cracks the whip on 2 companies for stock price manipulation by misusing social media. More than 50 people and entities linked to Sadhana Broadcast and Sharpline Broadcast barred from the market till further notice. This also includes actor Arshad Varsi and his wife Maria Goretti. Relief for lenders to debt-ridden Reliance Capital. The Company Law Appellate Tribunal allows the Committee of Creditors to initiate another round of bidding. Lenders can now seek better offers from the 2 suitors, the Torrent Group and the Hinduja Group. No joint statement after a meeting of G20 foreign ministers in Delhi due to differences over Ukraine. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for the first time since the invasion of Ukraine. Health insurance premiums are set to rise. Sources say insurers have hiked premiums by more than 15% due to rising inflation in the healthcare sector. The BJP and its allies retain power in Tripura and Nagaland with a simple majority. Congrad Sangma's NPP emerges as the single largest party in Meghalaya but falls short of the halfway mark. Well, the top story this evening, the Adani family has trimmed its holding in 5 Adani Group companies and it's raised nearly 15,500 crore rupees in the bargain. The SB Adani Family Trust has offloaded shares in Adani Enterprises, Adani Transmission, Adani Ports and Adani Green Energy via block deals that took place on the exchanges this morning. And the shares have been picked up by international funds. The largest chunk of the money, that's 15,046 crores, has come in from GQG. It's a US-based company. Rajiv Jain is the co-founder and chairman of GQG Partners. Now, this is a boutique investment company based in Florida, which manages assets worth $88 billion across the world. The GQG Emerging Market Fund is worth about $11 billion. Now, GQG is not a new investor to India. The company has holdings in ITC, HDFC, Reliance, ICICI Bank, SBI, Sun Pharma, Bharti Airtel, and several other blue-chip companies. All 10 Adani Group stocks ended in the green for the 3rd day. The stocks are still well below their all-time highs, but have managed to claw back some of the lost ground in the last 3 sessions. Well, staying with the Adani Group, that's one big development. The other big development, the Supreme Court has set up a 6-member expert committee headed by former Supreme Court Judge A.M. Sapre in the Adani Hindenburg case. The panel comprises of veteran bankers like O.P. Bhatt and K.V. Kamath and will review the regulatory mechanism and suggest steps to protect investors from market volatility. The court has also directed the market regulator to probe allegations made by the Hindenburg Group against Adani. Now, less than an hour after the court's order, Gautam Adani tweeted, and I quote, "The Adani Group welcomes the order of the Honourable Supreme Court. It will bring finality in a time-bound manner. Truth will prevail," end of quote. Ashmit Kumar is standing by with the details of the Supreme Court order. Ashmit.
Well, the high-intensity, high-drama, high-stakes Adani Hindenburg saga got some much-needed clarity today from the top court of the country. Now, the Supreme Court today constituted, as you said, a 6-member committee to look into the issue. It will be headed by a retired Supreme Court Judge, Justice A.M. Sapre. The other members are no less prolific. Other members include retired Bombay High Court Judge, Justice Devadhar, former CBI Chairman O.P. Bhatt, banking icon K.V. Kamath, Infi Chairman Nandan Nilekani, and senior advocate Somsekhar Sundaresan. On a side note, Somsekhar Sundaresan was in fact recommended to be elevated as a judge by the collegium. The government had objected. So, what is the ambit of this committee? Well, the panel will be required to look into factors causing volatility and steps to strengthen investor awareness, panel has also been charged to give recommendations on strengthening existing investor protection framework. Interestingly, Sebi has also been mandated to investigate if there was any regulatory failure in dealing with alleged contravention of the laws. Now, speaking of Sebi, the market regulator has also received very pointed directions from the top court. Supreme Court has directed Sebi to probe three very clear issues. Number one, possible violation of minimum public shareholding norms. Number two, failure to disclose related party transactions. And number three, manipulation of stock prices. Supreme Court wants this to be a time-bound process and has directed Sebi to complete the investigation within 2 months and to submit its report. Interestingly, Supreme Court has stayed quiet on the demand for investigations on money that was either loaned or invested in the Adani Group companies. But it's the Supreme Court appointed committee that now holds all the keys. 2 months from now, when Sebi concludes its investigation, is when clarity will begin to emerge on the saga.
The committee that has been constituted could not have been, in my view, a better committee. You couldn't have found a better committee. You couldn't have found a more transparent committee. They are filled with people with utmost integrity who have held very, very responsible jobs. Now, there's no question of any of them being party to any kind of cover-up. So whatever will be looked into thoroughly. These are experts.
I think we should look in this order with a perspective. It should not look seen in isolation. Because the three biggest allegations in terms of the Hindenburg report was 19A, which is 25% minimum public shareholding compliance, related party transaction, and alleged stock manipulation. So three big items. Supreme Court said that Sebi should look into this specifically, but that does not mean the investigation should only look into these three things.
Well, reactions coming in there to the Supreme Court order in the Adani Hindenburg matter. KV Kamath, who has now been named in the 6-member panel looking into the Adani case by the Supreme Court, spoke with CNBC-TV18 on the 27th of February. He said that there is no loss of confidence in India due to the Adani crisis, adding that no single group or company can write the history of a nation. What does the current crisis with the Adani Group stocks and the Adani Group mean from an economic point of view?
Yeah, I think, firstly, I don't want to talk about any specific group, Shireen. The market is functioning, the banks are functioning. The rest of it is, I do not really want to comment on. I will only say this in a larger context that, my 50 years plus of being in the banking business, 52 years to be precise, I don't think that any single group makes, or carves out the history of this nation. So I have, really speaking, no concern that overall India will continue on its path of progress at the pace we have outlined. That's all I want to say. And I don't see any loss of confidence in India consequent to these.
Well, that was KV Kamath, who's now part of that 6-member panel set up by the Supreme Court to look into this issue. Joining me now to talk about the developments in the Adani saga is the former Chief Economic Advisor, KV Subramaniam, who's currently holding the position of India's Executive Director at the International Monetary Fund. KV Subramaniam joins us now here on India Business Hour. Always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us. It's a very early morning for you. But let me get started by asking for your thoughts on the many developments that have taken place in this saga just today. The two big developments, let me start by asking you what you make of the Supreme Court order, the court setting up a committee. It is headed by a former Supreme Court justice. It also has eminent personalities like Mr. KV Kamath, O.P. Bhatt, Nandan Nilekani and others. Not just to look at the issue of investor protection, but also to look if there have been any regulatory lapses. Separately, the court asking the market regulator to look into 3 specific allegations that have been made in this matter. I want your first thoughts on what you make of the Supreme Court's order.
Very good evening to viewers and very good evening, Sharon. Thanks for having me. I think it's a very important development. It's a good development because it will, I think, push India. Especially some of the governance aspects, it'll push it, in the right direction. I will recall, Sharon, that when I was part of the Uday Kota Corporate Governance Committee, I had actually looked at the disclosure of related party transactions. We had looked at the disclosure of related party transactions among NSE 500 entities. And we basically felt at that time that the quality of disclosure of related party transactions among NSE 500 entities, I mean, these are entities where the spotlight is the maximum, could be improved significantly. Specifically, we had actually, looked at transactions that were disclosed, because related party transactions are like double entry bookkeeping. If, firm A is doing something with firm B, then, both firm A and firm B should be basically disclosing it. And we used a text mining algorithm to go and check. What we found was in only 1/3 of the transactions actually where both parties disclosing it and, the amounts were right. In 1/3 of the cases, one of the parties did not disclose it. And in another 1/3 of the cases, the amounts were wrong and systematically so. So I think overall, the quality of disclosure of related party transactions needs to improve significantly. The spotlight here needs to be put on the auditors as well, because they are signing on, some of these financial statements without actually ensuring that the related party transaction disclosures are high. I think, to the extent that this particular episode leads to, much better disclosure on quality of related party transactions, I think that'll be a very, very, positive and a very significant development.
Okay, so you're saying that as far as related party transactions are concerned, there is need for an overhaul. There is need for, change there in terms of disclosure, and you believe that this will hopefully lead to that. But specifically from an Adani perspective, and I know that you have in your piece previously also argued that there is an element perhaps of irrational exuberance as well as a structural shift moving more and more towards this infrastructure capex story that could have potentially driven up prices and not necessarily manipulation. As things currently stand, and today the second big development that's taken place is that the promoters, the Adani family trust, has sold equity across minority stakes across their group entities and raised about 15,400 crores from a US-based fund and, of course, some other smaller names, but the large chunk has gone to GQG, which is a US-based fund. Now, in light of the kind of value erosion, wealth destruction that we have seen, do you believe that this development will perhaps offer a floor at this point in time? I must also point out, for the benefit of our viewers, and of course this is a developing story, but at least in two cases, the transaction has happened at a deep discount to the 52-week high.
So, Sherin, I have a couple of points to make. One of the things that the Hindenburg report had said was that the Adani story was the biggest con in history. I think, when such a claim is made, one has to have a smoking gun. And the main point of my piece was that there is a plausible explanation that can be provided for the stock price rise, combining the structural change towards infrastructure spending by the government, and the fact that that Adani Group is actually known as an efficient, developer of such infrastructure. Together with that, some irrational exuberance. So if you have a plausible explanation, then the smoking gun is absolutely not there. I think to make that kind of hyperbolic claim that it is the biggest con in history, one needs to have a smoking gun. That was the main point that I mentioned. In the developments that you just talked about, I think investors put their money where their mouth is. The fact that investors have put in money, I think, clearly suggests that there is upside, and that upside should be essentially consistent with the fact that there is a lot of fundamental aspects to the Adani Group that is valuable. If you look at the blog article that Ashwath Damodaran, of NYU Stern has put up. There's also a very nice video that, Swaminathan Iyer actually has put, has put on this. I think, when you look at, these, you can clearly make out that there is, not that much legs to this story, that it is the biggest con in history.
Yeah, there are separate issues here. And as you mentioned in the start, that you believe that there is need to look at related party transactions and related party disclosures. Let me address the other issue, and that is the issue of opaque shareholding, whether it is offshore entities and so on and so forth, which is also part of the allegation that's been made. Forget for a moment the fact that these are good businesses and do have potential and significant headroom for growth because they are building on the India infrastructure story. Address the issue of opaque structure, the need for transparency there, again, the need for greater disclosure there, and whether, again, you believe that this is something like related party transactions needs to be reviewed, needs to be looked at.
In fact, Shirin, that actually falls in the domain of related parties. When you have, lack of disclosure on the, on who are the related parties, and that related party could be because there are common directors there. It could be because there is, management that is being shared across entities. I think when related parties are well recognized and all transactions between them are actually disclosed well, I think, there'll be a lot of, improvement in governance that will happen. In India, this is particularly important because we do have significant chunk of our economic activity that is actually driven by family-owned enterprises, which tend to be more conglomerates, not focused firms. And therefore, there are, many entities that actually within the conglomerate that are likely to be related parties. So the quality of disclosure on that needs to improve significantly. Here, as I said before, I will put the onus on auditors. I think NFRA needs to really get its act together. At the same time, the ICAI actually, and I've observed, ICAI in the Corporate Governance Committee. I think they need to actually, bring their act together. They can't be, a setup where basically they end up only looking the other way, oftentimes on some of the, poor quality disclosures. We have to remember that, financial statements are the first line of defense for any investor. And I think the overall improvement in, financial statements, the onus is on, institutions like ICAI and NFRA, together with Sebi. Of course, Sebi also has to tighten, on related party transaction disclosures. NSE 500 entities, we found the quality of disclosure to be quite poor. You can only imagine actually how it would be on entities that are actually, not as much in the spotlight. So I think this is an area that actually needs significant reform. I think there's a good opportunity to do that reform.
Right. So you said something that was very interesting. You said financial statements should be the first line of defense. And I ask you this as my parting question. What is your expectation, or what would you like to now see as far as the Adani Group is concerned? I know you had previously cautioned against the use of nationalism or conflating this crisis with an attack on India. What would your expectation be from the Adani Group in light of the many developments that have shaped this story so far?
So I have 2 points to mention here, Sharon. Firstly, I think that the Adani Group walked into the trap that was laid for them by using resorting to nationalism. That's exactly what they should not have done, and that is why I had tweeted as well. A private firm, even if, let's say, and I emphasize this, even if there is some dimension of trying to hurt the Indian economy, I think the private firm actually should have taken the better course of just responding based on financials, and business fundamentals. That's the right thing to do, for a private firm. If it were a sovereign wealth fund, actually using nationalism, I think might have been okay, but not for a private firm. That's my point number one. The second point is actually, Adani and, all our conglomerates actually together with the regulators need to really focus on enhancing the quality of related party transaction disclosures. I think this is something, the moment has come for India to move into the next level of governance, and related party transactions. I've always believed, they are the genesis of three things, money laundering, tax evasion, and willful default. Now, let me tell you, actually, I'm not saying, this is any of this is necessarily happening in NSE 500 entities or entities like that. But these three activities happen through related party transactions, and therefore governance, I think improving those disclosure actually is extremely important. Final point I'd say is, any expectation that some of the constant critics would have had that this will take down the Indian economy, I think have clearly been belied. That is what I actually kept saying. I think it's more hope than reality.
All right, Mr. Subramanian, we will leave it there. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18 with your take on the several developments that have taken place in the Adani saga today, starting with the Supreme Court and closing with the Adani Family Trust selling minority stakes across their businesses to a large US fund. On to the market action, a range-bound session on the Lal Street. We've seen the Sensex and the Nifty wipe out gains clocked yesterday. The Sensex lost over 500 points, the Nifty lost nearly 130 points. Banks and mid-caps also coming under pressure. Market regulator Sebi has cracked the whip on 2 companies for stock price manipulation by misusing social media. More than 50 people and entities have been linked to Sadhana Broadcast, and Sharpline Broadcast have been barred from the market until further notice. Yash joins us now with the details on this important order that's come in from Sebi.
Well, the first of its kind from market regulator Sebi, 2 orders against 2 companies on charges of misuse of social media for price manipulation. The 2 companies are Sadhana Broadcast and Sharpline Broadcast. Interestingly, shares prices of both companies were artificially inflated through propagating false and misleading information via YouTube. The modus operandi was a group of individuals purchasing shares at a much lower price and then uploading false and misleading videos on YouTube recommending buying into these shares for the larger public. These YouTube channels had lakhs of subscribers and videos received crores in viewership. These false and misleading videos were boosted by promotion through paid advertising campaigns. Now, the natural outcome of all of these things was a spurt in the volume and the price of the shares, helping certain KMPs and people in the know of the matter offload their shares to the general public. Now, notices mentioned by Sebi in its order against the 2 companies included creators of YouTube channel, net sellers and profit makers, and volume creators. Sebi has been able to establish connection between all these 3 categories of individuals. Now, in the case of Sadhana Broadcast, Sebi has named 31 people as notices, which include actor Arshad Warsi and his wife, Maria Goretti Warsi, who made profit of about 29 lakh and 38 lakh respectively. Now, in its order against Sadhana price manipulation case, Sebi has barred all notices from accessing the capital markets till further notice. Also, certain notices will have to disgorge their illegal gains of nearly 42 crore as penalty. In the case of Sharpline Broadcast, Sebi has named 24 people as notices. All these notices again have been barred from accessing the capital markets till further notice from the regulator. Also, certain notices here as well will have to disgorge the illegal gains of about 12 crore as penalty.
Yash, many thanks for joining us. Time for us to head into a short break. But up next, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for the first time since the invasion of Ukraine. That and more when we return. Results for assembly elections in 3 northeastern states announced today. The Bharatiya Janata Party will retain power in Tripura. The Left Congress IPFT alliance comes a distant second. The Tripura Mota, headed by erstwhile Royal Scion Pradyut Dev Burman, impresses in their debut assembly election, winning 13 seats. Napier Rios's NDPP, which fought the elections in alliance with the BJP, retains power in Nagaland. The state has also got a woman MLA for the first time since independence. It will, however, be a hung house in Meghalaya. Conrad Sangma's NPP may emerge as the single largest party, but will fall short of majority. In Maharashtra, Congress Ravinder Dhankar won the Kasba Assembly by-poll by nearly 11,000 votes, defeating BJP's Hemant Rasane. Kasba Peth had been a BJP bastion for 28 years. BJP's Ashwini Jagtap retained the Chinchwar seat. The seat was vacated after the death of Lakshman Jagtap. The Supreme Court has stopped the government from unilaterally appointing election commissioners. A 5-judge constitution bench has ruled that the appointments should be done on the advice of a panel with the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition and the Lok Sabha and the Chief Justice of India. The process will remain till the government frames a specific law. The G20 foreign ministers meeting is concluded in Delhi, and once again, no joint communique being issued. However, differences over issues related to the Russia-Ukraine war will, of course, be remembered for some crucial meetings on the sidelines. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar met China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Jaishankar told his counterpart that India-China relations were abnormal. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov met briefly. This was the first face-to-face meeting between the two leaders since Russia invaded Ukraine. Parikshit standing by with more. No joint communique, Parikshit, but the unexpected taking place. Blinken meeting his Russian counterpart and, of course, the meeting between Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart.
Well, clearly the temperatures in the room were very high when the G20 met earlier today at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. You had 28 foreign ministers and all the big foreign ministers from G7 nations, Antony Blinken, Qin Gang, Sergei Lavrov were all present in that meeting, and there were some sharp words exchanged. Blinken, ahead of the foreign ministers' meeting, had told the US media that he will not be meeting Sergei Lavrov or Qin Gang for that matter. But yes, there was a 10-minute unscheduled meeting, you can call it a pull-aside, that took place at the G20 sidelines. And we believe that over there, Secretary Blinken gave his assessment of the Ukraine war, asked Russia to participate in the START treaty once again. The Russian side denied any of these conversations. They said that there was only a brief chat. There was no formal conversation. There was no formal meeting at all. Lavrov also went on to say in this meeting that he was shocked by the impunity of the West when it came to the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage as well. There were foreign ministers who asked for the continuation of the Black Sea grain initiative for the greater good of Ukraine as well. But Russia said that they should be allowed to export as well. It was clearly Russia and China, the elephant in the room, which did not want any reference to Ukraine in the communique. And that's why the talks on the communique fell through. And we believe the Prime Minister and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar really wanted some sort of consensus document at the end of the meeting. But that did not happen. However, Jaishankar said that there was consensus on food and energy security, on debt restructuring and resilient supply chains as well. He met his counterpart, Qin Gang from China, and he said that the relationship right now can be described as abnormal.
All right. Many thanks, Parikshit, for joining us. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news continues here on CNBC-TV18. Stay tuned.